All right, we're going to transition to our second talk, but I just wanted to let you know that Robert Jacoby is with us, hanging out in the chat. So please feel free to pop in your questions. I'm sure he would love to interact with you all. Our second talk is going to be ARIA State Management and Modern CSS, presented by Nick Croft, lead developer of Reactive Studios.
Folks, this is Nick Croft with Reactive Studios. You may already know me as Nick the Geek. Today I'm going to be talking about ARIA State Management and Modern CSS. Before I get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Visually, I am a pretty large guy. I've got shaggy hair and a shaggy beard. I'm wearing a blue shirt. It may look kind of scary, but I promise I'm really nice. One thing about me is I just recently got my first tattoo. That is in honor of my daughter. Last year, she had a traumatic heart attack, nearly died on us, lost her left leg, has a brain injury, but she's doing phenomenally well. She's been recovering, started back at school. We're really excited about that. So I got that on her Alive Day to honor the fact that she survived. I bring that up because a lot of what I focus on is accessibility. I've been focused on that for a long time, but now it's like lit the fire, so to speak. I'm even more excited about it. So I want to dig in and talk about what's going on with ARIA State Management. I've created a demo here. You should be able to see it. I've got my accordion demo, and this accordion demo will use ARIA attributes to set state and controls, then style the states in order to make them a priority in the visual and screen reader information. So if I scroll down here, we'll see this demo here. We've got toggle panel 1 with some lorem ipsum there, and the first little bit of that is a link, and then toggle panel 2 and toggle panel 3. Now, if I click on one of these, it's going to close. And if I click on it again, it's going to open. If I click on panel 2, it's going to open. And if I click on panel 3, it's going to open. And they will continue to toggle and open as long as I continue to click on them. Now I can also use my keyboard. So I'm switching to use the tab key. I am focused into panel 1, and I'm going to hit the space bar and it opens right up. Now if I tab again, it's going to focus onto that lorem ipsum because it is a focusable element. I'm going to tab out and close. If I tab again, it's going to skip right over that. And that's really important that it doesn't focus on focusable elements when they've been hidden. So now if I continue to tab around and open things up, it works. If I tab up to panel number 2, and this time I'm going to hit my enter key, it's going to work. And it's really important that that happens because buttons should work with the space bar and enter key. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. So the last thing I want to show you with this demo is if I turn on my screen reader, it is going to work.
VoiceOver on Safari. A11 way day demo. Private browsing window. Visited link. Word accordion. You are currently on a heading level 2.
So I am using my screen reader. I've just used my mouse to kind of move it into this so I can focus on the accordion demo. First thing I'm going to do is hit my tab key, which is going to move me down to the panels.
Toggle panel 1, collapsed button. You are currently on a heading level 3.
And what it did was announce that this is currently collapsed. I'm going to use my space bar to open it.
Toggle panel 1, expanded button.
And so now it's announced that it's expanded, and I can go ahead and move in and see what's in that content.
1. Link, lorem, fringilis, aget dictum, velm, solicitude, iaculus. You are currently on a text element.
Now I'm on toggle panel number 2, and again, I can open this.
Toggle panel 2, expanded button.
Or I can
toggle panel 2, collapsed button. Toggle panel 3, expanded button, main. You are current. Toggle panel 3, collapsed button.
Okay.
VoiceOver off.
So all the states are announced as we're working with this. And it's really important those states are announced so that people know what's happening, what's going to go on when they interact with all these buttons. Now let's look at some of the code that makes this work. Now you may be worried because it says svelte here, but I assure you the reason I picked this is so that we can focus on pure HTML. In fact, there is only HTML happening inside of this particular file. In the other files that we'll look at is only vanilla JavaScript and only simple CSS. So the first thing we've got is a div, and we have an ID there. I'm not really using this right now, but I could use it if I needed it. And it has a class accordion. Most of the classes throughout here are used for styling. We do have a little bit of work that I'm using in JavaScript to pull in some of these classes, but for the most part, they're used for styling. Now we've got that H3, and we're using heading tags so that these can be part of headings as they appear above sections. So that is a little bit different than what we might have with different kind of control, like a tab group, where it's not really separate sections that are there. So this is going to be labeled using headings. And then we have a button. Again, it's really important that we use a button. We'll talk about this some more later, but we get some free stuff because it's a button. And the type is being declared. That's not necessarily specifically required. I pulled this from the WCAG ARIA guidelines there, as they had these different components, and I've modified it some, but I left in a few of the things that they had there. The ARIA expanded is what indicates that the panel is open, and then the class is what we're using to style it and then target it. Then we have ARIA controls and panel 1. This is an ID, and it targets this ID here that is our panel. So we're going to link these two ideas together, these two elements together, using this ARIA controls. And then finally, we have an ID on here that we're going to use as well to link these two things together. And so now we have a span, and we have a little bit of text, and that's being read out. We're using the span to handle some of our styling with this. Now we've got the panel itself, and so it has ID is panel 1. The role is region. Because we've got multiple regions, we are labeling them, and so we label them using the accordion 1, which is our button. And so it's labeled by this content here. Next, we have a class. The class is being used in order to target this with CSS. And finally, we have ARIA hidden is false. This particular element is shown at page load, so it's not hidden. And our button says that it is expanded because the thing that it controls is not hidden, it's expanded. Inside of it, we just have a little bit of HTML, a couple of paragraph tags with some Laura Mipson and this link tag. We can put any kind of HTML inside there that is acceptable to put inside of a div, which is pretty much any kind of HTML. So you can have images, lists, headings, you can have other divs, spans, tables, forms, whatever you need to put inside of there, it can be added to it. I've basically replicated this 2 more times. So we have another H3 and button. This one is ARIA expanded false, and it is controlling this section 2 here, which is ARIA hidden is true at page load. And this third one rather is very similar, just has another unique ID here and a unique ID here. We want to make sure that these IDs are always unique so that they pull in and work correctly with our JavaScript. So speaking of our JavaScript, let's look at our JavaScript. It's all of 33 lines of code, including white space, including all of the comments that I've added to this to make it understandable what's going on with everything. The first thing that I do, well, I'm using a event listener on downloaded just to make sure that everything exists before we start trying to interact with it. The next thing I do is set my accordion triggers. I am targeting that class that is the buttons. Down at the bottom of there, I'm looping my accordion triggers, and I'm adding an event listener on click. Now, this is why it's so important to use a button whenever you need to have some kind of actionable action, something that happens whenever you click on it instead of going to a different web page. Because a button should respond to a click, it should respond to the enter key, it should respond to the space bar. If you used let's say a link and gave it role equals button, then it would by default work with the enter key and work with a click, but it would not work with the space bar. So screen reader users are hearing this is a button, but they're not actually able to interact with it like a button. So then you have to add an event listener for key up to see if they've pressed the space bar, which adds a lot more complexity. If you make it a button, you get all of that for free. Now this calls this button click which just basically calls this toggle panel. The main reason I separated that out is I wanted to really be able to focus on what's happening here. So we have the button that gets passed to it, and we load our panel. We're able to find our panel because we're using ARIA controls. Remember, that is an ID, and it is the ID of our panel. So we can just get this attribute and use getElementById, and now we've got a panel. The next thing I want to do is find out if it's currently visible. And if it is visible, then ARIA expanded will be true. And so that's the current state of the button. Now we need to change the state of the button, which is what we're going to do here. So on the button itself, we are going to change the ARIA expanded to the opposite of whatever this visible property is. So if it's currently visible, it will now be false. ARIA expanded equals false. If it is not visible, so currently ARIA expanded is false, it's going to flip that to ARIA expanded is true. And then our panel property is going to also set an attribute on ARIA hidden. So if the button is currently visible, ARIA expanded is true, then that means ARIA hidden is currently false, and we need to make ARIA hidden true. So we're going to flip that now, so it's going to become true, or we're going to switch it around and make it false. That's all of the JavaScript, and all we're doing is flipping those two attributes, and we're using the ARIA controls and the ARIA expanded to find out what current states are. We could do a lot of other stuff with state management if we wanted to, but this was really simple and really easy to do and lets the DOM be our state management. The last thing we have is our styling. Now with the styling, basically the top of this is focused largely on creating the look and feel of everything. We're adding borders, we're adding some different spacing and padding, some colors, all of that stuff is happening. Now, one of the things that we have down here is on the accordion trigger after, this code right here is what is making our down arrow. And we are setting a transition of transform so that whenever this value changes, the transform is going to be animated. And then again, with our accordion panel, we have set our visibility, and we have hidden our overflow, and we have our scale set as a default. But the other thing that we're doing here is we have transition all, so we're going to be actually animating a few different things whenever that expands. Now the last bit, the stuff that actually does the triggering, is this little code right here. So on our accordion trigger, whenever ARIA expanded is true, that means that it's open, we change our transform, and what that does is flips the icon around so it's pointing up, and it's going to do a rotate effect whenever that happens because we've got that transition on transform. And then the accordion panel itself, if it is ARIA hidden true, then we want to show or we want to hide the accordion panel. So by default it shows, and then whenever the state changes, we are going to hide it. And so visibility becomes hidden. This is really important because it's what prevents focus from happening to content inside of there. And then we change our scale, and we change some padding, and we change our height, and that's what allows it to have that animate effect. However, we don't want to leave that as the only way we do things, because sometimes animations can cause people trouble. And so we have prefers reduce motion happening. And all I'm doing is taking those two animated elements and setting the transition to none. So it's going to just snap whenever people activate it. And that way they won't have any potentially triggering animations. There's a lot of different ways to handle the animations. If I were to take a little bit more time, I'd probably work with some keyframes and get some roll-up effects or some other really cool things that you can do using keyframes. In that case, we would want to have a keyframe here that had either reduced motion or no motion associated with it. That way we can honor that request for prefers reduced motion. So that's kind of all the stuff that's happening with this. Everything is working really well. As you'll see, if I click on this, that rotates around, this animates down, all things are happening and working correctly. One of the things that I did is also have a tabs demo. I don't have quite enough time to go through all the code, but it's really similar. And you just click on it, everything works correctly. All the ARIA controls, all of the different ARIA describe bys labels all work correctly. The fun thing about this one is if you use your tab key, you actually focus on the tab group, and then you're able to use your keyboard, left, right arrows to navigate through all of this. Otherwise, it works pretty much the same. Now, to make this easier for you to get, because I know there's a little bit of code there, I've got these code pins set up. And so these links will make sure they're provided to you. And I'll be tweeting them out as well if you want to follow me at Nick_the_geek, just like it is here in this code pin. But if you go to codepin.io, Nick_the_geek pin, GOZQKWL, or YZLBVMN. Those two pins right there are going to get you all of the code that I just shared. And it's going to be set up as pure HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, so you can import that into whatever kind of framework you're using, whether it's PHP, whether it's React, whether it's Vue, whether it's Svelte, whether it's whatever. You can get that into whatever you're using and start modifying this to your own ends. I hope this has been helpful and informative. Looking forward to a great conference. You all have a wonderful day.